Okay.
I got our little cue card thingy. So all right, we're gonna take season one, episode five, Steve. Is that what we were? Episode five?
Episode five, absolutely.
All right, Steve, you can get us started here.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here today, and we're really excited to have a special guest, Mayor Iain Lovatt of Stouffville, Ontario. And for those of you who don't live around here, Stouffville is a suburb, a beautiful suburb just north of Toronto, north and a little bit east. I've got lots of history and roots there. Alan's spending a lot of time there these days, and we're excited to have the mayor with us. So. Mayor, thank you for joining us. And maybe just as we get started, you can just tell us a little bit about how does one end up becoming the mayor of mayor? I know you've got a varied background in ministry, marketing, different things, and here you are as a second term, I believe, going for a third term of mayor. And I'm told you're doing an amazing job. So how does all that happen? So
Well, good to be with you guys. So I just kind of fell into politics, to be honest with you. I was working at Muskoka Woods, which is a youth development organization with a resort up on Lake Rosso. And in 2010, well, one of the perks of working full time with Muskoka Woods for over 16 years was we had a little cottage up on Lake Rosso that we didn't have to pay for. So we would move up this week, actually, like the end of school, and come back on Labor Day. And in 2010, I came back from the summer, and two things had happened in town. One was the toboggan hill that was in Memorial Park that I would take my kids to pretty much religiously every Saturday during the winter with all of our friends. We would meet as a community and just have a great time. We got home and it was gone.
Oh.
It used to be in Memorial Park on Diamond 3, and it was just removed. It was gone. So it's like, what the heck? Like, how did that just happen? And then the other thing was there was talk about our outdoor pool in Memorial Park being filled in. And so these two things really annoyed me. And instead of being, the guy on Facebook, because that's all that existed back then, complaining about what these decisions that were being made by the town and ultimately by council. I decided I was going to do something about it. So literally got home Labor Day weekend, signed up that week, first week back, which was the last week you could sign up to run back then, and put a campaign together, knowing nothing about politics, nothing about campaigning. I I never took a poli sci course in university. I had zero interest in it, but thought, man, like these decisions are being made without any consideration to families with young kids. And that's really what it was. So I was really involved in my kids' school at the time, and the school was in Ward 5. I lived in Ward 6. Didn't know that that was going to be a big deal for people as I was going and knocking on doors, but literally had the friend of mine who did a lot of marketing work and design work from Muskoka Woods designed me my brochures. I had the worst election sign in the history of election signs. Couldn't read it from if you drove by on the street. Like, you want to be able to, these signs have a science behind them, now, right? Like, you want to be able to read the name and, you know, I had this really great slogan, a fresh perspective for Stouffville. And um, anyway, I was running against the incumbent who was Richard Bartley, and we had kids the same age. We knew each other, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. And then at the all candidates meeting, um, I gave the speech of all speeches, and um, it upset some members of council, and anyway, I kind of knocked on every door that I could, kind of shared my fresh perspective for Stouffville and fiscal accountability and making sound decisions. And um, election night, I came second.
Mhm.
And I remember Jim Mason, who is was the editor of the Stouffville Sun Tribune at the time, came into the Earl of Whitchurch pub where my little party was happening, and he said, "So, Mr. Levitt, you came second. Are you going to run again?" And I was like, "Darn right, I'm running again. See in 2014." And so that's how it kind of happened. And I ran in 2014, and Richard, who was the incumbent, ran for mayor. And there were two sitting councilors that ran for mayor because Mayor Emerson was stepping down and going up to the region to be regional chair. And so it was an open seat. And what ended up happening is I got elected into Ward 5, and I had actually moved into Ward 5 in that 4 year period. So that kind of issue was no longer there because some people were very clear, like, you live in Ward 6, you can't represent me. That's
Yeah.
changed a lot in the last two elections. So we have people representing other wards where they don't live now, but interesting. Back then, it was a very important thing. And then,
Mhm.
yeah, so I got elected onto council in 2014. And then we went through a pretty tumultuous term of council with the mayor that did win. And it was neither the two sitting councilors. And I decided probably in the last year of that term that I could do better and the town deserved better. And you know what? I'm going to give it a shot, put everything I've got into running for mayor, realizing it's very difficult to unseat an incumbent. And despite Mayor Altman's challenges, he was, Stouffville, born and bred, charismatic young guy, had a very, very strong base. And there was four of us that were running in that election. So, the more people that run, the better it is for the incumbent because the new guys all just kind of split the vote. But I was very, very happy to win.
Yeah.
And then that was in 2018. And then, and the world shut down and the
Yeah.
pandemic happened, and leading through that time in our history was probably one of the most challenging leadership experiences for anybody, whether you were
Yeah.
leading a business or or a town or a city. Um, you know, the weight of the world was on our shoulders as political leaders, because all the decisions we were making and that we were enforcing that were coming down from the feds and the province, we were left to ensure that they happened, and they impacted not only families but businesses and um, how we operate as a town. It was incredibly challenging time for everybody,
Yeah.
but and just trying to do your best with what you had and understanding that things were changing so quickly and the information was changing so quickly. And, one minute you're allowed to be in groups of 10, and one minute the next minute it's 25, and then it's 50, but now it's back to 10. And, you know, restaurants couldn't be open, and how do you help them? And anyway, it was crazy. So, but I think we did the best that we could, and we led through that. And then I ran again in
Okay.
2022, and was successful and got a mandate. I got the majority of the vote, and we've had a pretty good term of council and over this last term, and seeking another one. Having too much fun.
Well, we definitely wish you all the best as you run again this later this year. I don't know about you, Stephen, but as I listened to Iain, there was just lots of progress over perfection screaming all over there. Like even at the beginning when he talked about having not the perfect signs, about, I mean, I love that. And you came on like, so yes, as everybody can see, our progress over perfection is the title of our thing. Just on a couple of those things, like if we ask you, Iain, progress over perfection. Is there an example out of those stories or something else that you said, hey, that made a difference in my life when I applied a little bit of the progress over perfection mantra?
Well, listen, I'm the first to admit that I haven't arrived, and
Mhm.
I'm a work in progress, as we all
Mhm.
are. I think,
Yes.
the minute we think we have arrived or we've made it is, you know, the minute hubris can set in very quickly, and
Mhm.
so. I never want to be a leader that I never want to be a leader where pride and you know this kind of sense that I'm something, like
Mhm.
I'm the mayor, like
Yeah.
I got into this job to serve people and in the past my past life, my first job, real job, was when I lived out in Vancouver and was the area director for Young Life in Langley, BC, and we were serving kids, and in high school, and at that time, pre-social media, thank God. It was challenging enough, helping kids kind of find purpose and just a sense of direction, and then from there, becoming a full-time pastor at the Langley Vineyard in Langley, BC, and serving people through that ministry, and then coming back to Ontario in 2002 to work full-time for Muskoka Woods, and again serving, young people from ages 7 to 17. And yeah, like there are certainly people that, we can look up to and think that they're exceptional leaders and they've got great qualities, and many of them do. Like, I was never really a great public speaker as an example. And it's something I've had to work on, and I think I've gotten pretty good at it, but I'm not going to win a Toastmasters. You know? And I think it's just, it's good just to walk with a limp. I think
Mm.
that, and I thank my wife for reminding me that I have one every time. You
That's
know,
awesome.
so yeah, I mean, I think it's just important to realize that we're always a work in progress, and we're always should be learning. And the minute you take a position of perfection,
Mhm.
you're in trouble. you
Oh,
know, we often can't tell our own stories, right? So, and if we think we can, we usually end up, walking into walls and tripping over our own feet. So it's way better to have kind of open hands and take a posture of humility and learning. And I find that I've grown tremendously by maintaining or trying to maintain that posture.
yeah, I love how you said in 2010 you just felt like you wanted to make a difference, and so you just jumped in. Like you didn't have a big plan, you didn't really know what you were doing, and yet you still went ahead and do it. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's what we did when we started this podcast. Alan had this crazy idea, and I said, why are we doing it?" He goes, "Just come along for the ride." So here we are, and I think we're learning as we go. And it just as you're talking, I'm just thinking about the life of a mayor. Like, I can't even imagine all the things you get pulled into and the request for your time, and that you're giving us some time like this. Like, I can't even imagine. So I guess rather than talking about the mayor stuff, like well, one of the things we talk about in this, there's a lot about is how we become better dads and husbands and leaders outside of work. And so with the demands on your time and on your and on you in general, like how do you do that? And how do you I don't really like using the word term balance because I think there's seasons of life where you're more focused on one area than the other, and there's days and weeks and time. But how do you manage that tension of, being a family man with also being a high profile in a small community that really expects a lot of you and expects you to be everywhere all the time? So how do you do that?
Great question. So I think, not, I mean, we had an idea, my family, I mean, my kids are older. I couldn't do this job if I had young kids, just straight out of the gate. Like, I think that it's just, listen, people can obviously choose to go down a path that they want if they've got small kids. This is not a path I would take with small children because you are
Mm.
away a lot. Um, I think interestingly enough, the first term as being mayor, we were home a lot because of the pandemic.
Oh,
So
Right.
my kids were actually home too, right? Because they weren't at school. They were all transitioned to online. Um, my oldest daughter was still home with us, but engaged, and she got married actually over COVID. So that was kind of a cool thing to navigate through. Small wedding in our backyard with 25 people. Um, but being home, I had an office, and that's where I kind of was, and but I could pull out, during the day, and we had my kids were there, and so um, we've got a pretty tight family to start with. And then coming into this term, which, the world reopened and kind of things got, better, quote unquote. Although that's a whole podcast in of itself of the damages of the pandemic on, you know, just on people's psyche and the way the world operates now. Um, Knowing that and the kids really understanding what it was that I was doing and the responsibility of that. And they're in their 20s, so like they're forging their own paths and working and friends and families and and but we did get to a point certainly with my wife where we sat down and was like, I'm out a lot, like 4 or 5 nights a week, and that had to stop. And so a couple of years ago, I sat down with my assistant and said, 2 nights a week. That's it. And we've done a pretty good job at maintaining that. There are some weeks where it's just you can't, and you know, just openly communicate with family and this guys, this week I'm out 5 nights a week. And it's because there's all these events that are happening and there's an expectation, and some of them, are ones that I want to be at and support as an example. But it kind of ebbs and flows, Stephen, like you were talking about, right? And so I think it's just really about realizing I've got a job to do, and it's an important one. Leading the municipality and certainly working with our senior management team and dealing with lots of fires, right? Like
yeah.
it's, you're putting out lots of fires. But I'm also very cognizant of the fact that I truly believe in public service. I actually, I'm not a politician to be the mayor. I'm the mayor to be a servant of the people and
Mm.
help people where I can. And so sometimes you get calls at 10 o'clock at night, and it's something that is an urgent issue with a resident and is like the weight of the world is on their shoulders. And I can alleviate that weight or remove it completely with a phone call.
Mm.
And that to me is what's so great about this job.
That's awesome.
Really truly solving people's issues and making their lives better. And that's, the municipal level of government is the one closest to the people, and it's one that has the most impact. And that's why I have no desire to go up, no desire to go to Queen's Park or go to Ottawa at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe Ottawa in the future, but
You never know.
not for a
Yeah.
while. So
So
truly,
Ian,
truly having a good time and so, helping people.
I love when you shared this story and the one before. And one of the reasons why I kept prompting Stephen to do this thing was our involvement as accountability partners in our men's group. And I think we shared that with you before, the Leader Impact Group, and you've heard of them, Ian. And one of the things, the term I use with Stephen is helping each other check our ego at the door. And you use different ways of not thinking that you're perfect and you have a humble uh, approach to things. How do you, and that's what we want to share with the men or hopefully other people, women, everybody, kids here is how have you helped yourself? And Stephen and I term check your ego at the door, and you use other ways of not thinking you're perfect. Like, how do you keep yourself grounded that way?
It's difficult.
It is.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, especially when you're in, a position of prominence. Um, I think it's very, you got to keep short accounts. It's very
Yeah.
easy, very, very easy to become, get in your head and think that you're more
Mhm.
than you are. And so, but, you know, I think through the ministry seasons early on as a young leader, and then working with Muskoka Woods for 16 years, um, really, really strongly developed I'll say a need for team,
Mm.
you know, and even today as mayor, one of you, if you want to do this job well and you want to have fun doing this job, you need to build consensus and you need to build a strong team around you. And I've had the good fortune to be able to do that because I have colleagues who have a fractured council and it's awful.
Mm.
Like I wouldn't want to be leading in their municipalities with kind of their reality. Um, but we don't, obviously it's politics. You don't always agree with your colleagues, but you make the decision and the council decides and majority rules and you move on, right? And
Yeah.
you deal with even if you don't agree with those decisions. And that was actually a lesson I learned very early in my first term as a counselor, is that um, because I was passionate about certain items and was on the wrong side of the vote, and then, took to social media to bash my colleagues for how, you know, short-sighted they were and or terrible a decision it was. And I just got called to account very quickly, about that, and realized like this was in the first year of me being on council. Just thinking, man, like, okay, there's a process and there's a way to do things here, and it's not benefiting me by putting a wedge between my colleagues and myself because I was on the wrong side of a vote. So I heavily rely on team, heavily. It's not, it's got nothing, just by nature of the job, there is position and authority. There's very little power. Like I'm not, not the president, right? Like I can't just, even though I am a strong mayor now, I don't, you know, I'm not writing orders and directing staff and dictating things. It's way better to work with the team that you've got. And if you build a strong team and and you build trust and you build consensus, things actually often go your way. And there's not a lot of drama. And that's actually what I think is most important to residents, right? I mean, residents
Yeah.
don't want to live in a municipality where they're seeing stuff in the headlines. And that's what we went through in that 2014 to 2018 term of council, which is why I think I was able to demonstrate I could bring some solid, sound leadership and settle everybody down. And we did that. So.
Yeah, yeah, you did.
So as we wrap this up, we do appreciate your time. I just as I look at your kind of your life, young life, and then pastoral ministry, then Muskoka Woods, now you're into second decade in Stouffville municipal politics. Everything you've done has been like really has been in service to others. So as we close, is there one lesson that you can give to business people or young leaders that are trying to get started in their life and like right, there's a lot of pressure to make money, a lot of pressure to do things for themselves and comparing with social media, comparing to others, but you kind of forged your own path and it was all about service to others. Is there one lesson you can give to some of the people listening to this that might, be enduring, that would, would be still just as good a couple of years from now as it is today?
I would think so. It's funny, right? The world's changed so much in the last 30 years. Um, like I remember when I bought my first cell phone in 1992 and thought that, it's like the coolest thing. Back then, the people carried the bricks around and or
Yeah,
had it in their car, like car phones, right? They actually had
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
a phone hardwired in their car. So I never had the pressures of social media, and or at least growing up through my 20s, with that. Like that was really the advent of the whole of social media and influencer craziness that we're experiencing today. I think I felt called into ministry back in my 20s. I knew I actually wanted to be a teacher, wanted to work with kids, and I left, graduated from Master University and went out to BC to do my master's degree at Trinity Western and didn't end up doing it because I got, way too involved with kids. And for me, it was just a matter of just seeing God open doors and taking the risk and walking through them, realizing that. So with Young Life back in my 20s, knowing nothing about really fundraising, and I had to raise my own support, and
yeah.
I'm living in BC and all my network is in Ontario and they've never even heard of Young Life before. And I hadn't either, but a friend at Trinity Western was like, come on, you can be a great volunteer. And that's how it started.
Wow.
Um, and then the same thing with, ending up at the Langley Vineyard. It was, a friend who said, you know, come and hang out. And, that was a faith experience that I had no experience in, I mean, it's part of a charismatic kind of movement, and had no idea that people would read their Bible and think that actually what they were reading in Acts could happen today, right? And again, just from there, moving to back to Ontario was a door that opened that I never anticipated, and taking that risk and that step. It was supposed to be a 3-year contract. Well, that's 24 years ago now. So it's crazy, and just being open to, I think, what God is calling you to and where you're being led. And now I'm the mayor. And like I said when we started, never, ever in a million years had a political aspiration. And um, now I'm doing the one thing that I look back on my life and all my experiences through vocational experiences and think I was set up perfectly to do this
Wow.
job. And
That's amazing.
and I'll do this job as long as people want me to. I mean, or I get called into something else. But at this point in time, I feel like I'm in the right spot at the right time, uh, to do the best job that I can serving our community.
And I definitely see that. I've run into in quite a few events in the Stouffville area, and just your heart for people and willing to serve, it comes through every time I see you at these events. So great job on you. Congratulations on that. And as we wrap this up, the reason why Stephen and I prompted Stephen, but he was on board, was we want to help people become the best versions of themselves in their professional, personal, and spiritual life. And we've heard a few stories with Iain here today. And as we always say to close up our podcast, is please, if you have any questions, big or small, because you want to be a better person in those three aspects. Steve, Stephen is a strategic leadership coach. I'm involved in a couple of community outreach programs, and I'm sure even if you found Iain on social media, with all his connections, if you have a big or small questions to navigate what we call life and help you to become a better person in your business, personal, or spiritual life, please reach out to any three of us. And Stephen, you want to close us off today?
Yeah, so thank you, Ian, and we really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, and I'll remember this. This was great. So thanks a lot for your time.
Pleasure to be with you guys.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Just